Well, looks like we're at 1, so do you want to get started?
I'm sure.
Okay, unless you have other staff who you want to wait to join us.
I think that, no, they see Jeff. No, we're good. We're good.
Okay. All right, well then, it's 1:01 p.m. on Wednesday, February 24th. I call the meeting to order. Dr. Fielder, any big announcements, big thoughts?
Well, a couple things that are going. As you know, the legislative body is still in session right now. So pieces of the legislation are moving through, which have impact. And of course, the largest is the passage of the Senate Bill 1, which has to do with the settlement of the coalition case with the HBCUs. The funding on it doesn't start until fiscal year 23, so that was changed, and the floor amount, minimum amount for an annual payout to any of the 4 institutions was changed till now $9 million. So the total is $557 million over a 10-year period, started in 23. So we expect that to pass both houses with no difficulty. And then it does require some continued work on the part of MHEC, the system, and Morgan to come to final agreements and settlement. So that's still continuing. I'd recognize a couple people on the screen. Sarah Baker, who has done a tremendous job as an analyst, working with us and presenting the budgets as we continue to go through. And Jeff will give that report in just a minute in terms of what's happening. I think the other thing is that we have 3 people who were included in the governor's green bag. The green bag is the appointments for new commission members. So Vera Jackson, Donna Mitchell reappointed. We have a new appointment of Craig Williams. Dr. Williams was previously the chief of staff for Governor Hogan in 2015, and then he moved on over to Johns Hopkins Health. And so that will be occurring in, I believe his appointment is effective July 1. So I think that's all I have to sum up, other than we're extremely busy. We did make some excellent progress this week too on the collaboration front, getting Notre Dame University of Maryland to work closely with Morgan to resolve the baccalaureate degree in actuarial sciences, which we're very, very pleased about. Before there had been an objection, it's been withdrawn with objection by Morgan to Notre Dame's request for a new program. As you know, we reviewed it. Staff recommended it. We recommended against implementation because of being a unique program for so many years at Morgan. So I'm glad to see the institutions are working together to move the capability for the students to be able to move through. So, and Debbie, for a moment, are you sharing your screen, or is this something else that just popped up on everybody?
No, I believe that's Lee. He's probably going to be sharing something later on, so I'll work it out with him.
Okay, great. No, this is have a great meeting from Go to Meeting, so maybe I can close that. All right, Mr. Shamir.
No major comments for me. It's just great to be with everyone again. Thank you to the team for sending out the board book. I found it really helpful. So unless there's anything from anyone else, I guess we can just move to the approval of the minutes. I think we have the December closed session and then the January meeting. So does anyone have any questions, comments, suggested amendments to any of the minutes? Okay, if not, does someone make a motion to approve them both?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented. This is Commissioner Jackson.
I second.
Excellent. Okay, good. Is there any further discussion? All right, if not, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Appears to be unanimous. All right, Dr. Fielder, the committee updates?
Actually, I would skip that over and have Jeff go ahead.
Okay, very good. I guess that's Department of Finance Administration. Jeff, over to you.
Hello, Jeff, are you got your mic on?
We can't hear you. At least I can't.
Yeah, if someone's speaking, I can't hear them.
No. Okay. Well, let's move on to Emily.
Yeah,
You're muted also. We can come back to Jeff. You're still muted.
Shall we try again? Does that work
Yeah.
now?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Aha. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, and Mr. Secretary. I really don't have anything to present. Donna Thomas is going to be presenting some information from the Office of Student Financial Assistance, but I will briefly say that we have had 3 of our 5 budget hearings in the General Assembly so far. We've had the Higher Ed Overview, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and the Aid to Community College budget hearings. And I didn't really notice anything too concerning from those budget hearings. And we have our 2 remaining budget hearings, one on Monday for the student financial assistance and one on Tuesday for our capital work that we do with the community colleges. So then we will be finished and have all our budget hearings wrapped up Tuesday afternoon. And really not much to say at this point in time. So if that's okay with you, I'll turn it over to Donna to present her information.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. On
Morning.
page 8 of the booklet, you will find the proposed amendments to the Komar scholarship regulations for the Delegate Howard P. Rawlings Educational Excellence Awards program. Today, we are presenting the proposed amendments to the Komar scholarship regulations for the Delegate Howard P. Rawlings Educational Excellence Awards program. We are requesting approval to publish those proposed amendments in Komar. The proposed regulations reflect the following amendments: the removal of the term alternate application, defining Maryland State financial aid application, and inserting the acronym throughout the document, adding institutional requirements for institutions that elect to verify eligibility for guaranteed access grant recipients. This was a legislative change that was passed during the 2019 legislative session that now allows institutions to complete the verification process for select guaranteed access grant recipients. Clarify the selection process of recipients. Clarify the verification of eligibility requirements that are to be performed by MHEC and post-secondary institutions to align with the statutory requirements. We also added new appeal criteria for guaranteed access grant applicants that allows them to appeal if they miss the March 1st FAFSA or MISFA deadline, and clarify the institutional audit requirements for any post-secondary institution that elects to complete the verification process for GA recipients. I will now proceed with reading the recommendation. It is recommended that the Commission approve for publication in the Maryland Register the enclosed proposed amendments for the Howard P. Rawlings Educational Excellence Awards Program and authorize MHEC's attorneys to improve non-substantive revisions as necessary to conform the proposed regulations to the stylistic and formatting requirements of AELR and of the Division of State Documents. Happy to take any questions if there are some.
Commissioners, any questions? I just have a process one. Would you mind just walking me through briefly the process here? So this is published and it's subject to the rules of the publication of regulations. So how long is it published? When do you get comments back? And then like what's the next step in the process?
I may need the assistance of Principal Counsel Jennifer Katz on that one with regards to the process. But once they are approved through the commission, they do go out for public comment. And I believe the public comment period is 30 days. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yes, yes. Soma she knows all of these by heart, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, 30 days.
Yes, sorry, I'm having trouble with my camera. Oh, there it is. Okay, maybe. So they have to be submitted to AELR first, and that's a 15-day waiting period. After that, they're submitted to the Division of State Documents, and they should be in the April 9th issue of the Maryland Register. Comment period will last until May 10th. Final adoption will be allowed May 25th, assuming there are no comments. So that makes it just under the wire for the May 26th commission meeting for final adoption. And then after that, of course, they have to be published again, and then there's a 10-day waiting period, and then they're effective.
Soma, would you explain what AELR is?
Oh,
It's
I'm
not
so
a
sorry.
serial.
It's the legislature's joint committee on administrative, legislative, and executive review. I'm
Yep.
so sorry. I don't actually know the exact, but essentially the committee reviews all regulations submitted by any agency across the state to verify that they're in line with the scope of the statutes that were passed and that they're being promulgated under.
And I would say that during that period of time, if something is recognized by AELR in terms of coming back to us to ask for different changes or updates and amendments, that then would come back to the commissioners because it wouldn't be necessarily approved, correct?
Right. It depends on the nature of it. On occasion, so usually they come back to me, and on occasion I've been able to explain, why something is the way it is, and then they are fine with moving forward. But yes, if they wanted a substantive change, it would need to come back to the commission.
Thank you.
So essentially, we approve this, assuming the commission approves it, and barring any ALR action, there will be comments from the public. Staff will decide whether or not amendments need to be made, and then we will see it again in a final form in May when we vote for the final time, and then it gets published, and then 10 days later, it's official.
Well, actually, if there are public comments and staff want to make changes based on public comments, the state's process actually provides that you essentially withdraw the regulations and start all over again rather than making changes and then taking them to final form. You could also resubmit them. It's essentially the same thing.
Okay, good. All right, thank you for the clarification. All right, any other questions, comments?
I did have one about the audit. I'm reading through it kind of quickly, so pardon me if I'm asking a question that's answered somewhere. Is there a time frame? I see that you have to, that the audit, there's a report, then there's a recommendation on findings. Is there a time frame through which the entity has to resolve the findings? Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did I get my question? Is there a time frame? So the question is there a time frame for a response to whatever audit findings are identified in the audit report?
Yes, the way the process works with the audit is institutions have until June 1st of each year to submit their independent audit review reports to MHEC. Once we receive the reports, we do follow up with the institutions if there are findings and provide to them a letter letting them know whether they need to return funds, the timing in which those funds need to be returned to MHEC, and so forth. And so that is provided once we receive those final reports.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. Anyone else? Okay, so I assume you need a vote from us to approve so they can be published. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Fielder? Okay, so would someone like to make a motion to approve the amendments as submitted to us?
I so moved, Commissioner Boyd.
I think that was Commissioner Boyd. Any second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Mitchell, thank you. All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Okay, thank you so much, Thomas, Secretary Fielder. Okay, next on the list, let me go back up to the agenda.
Is Lee Powers.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, members of the commission. I was asked to give an update on legislative session so far. We are, as of Friday, we will be halfway through session. We have reviewed a little over 100 bills so far this session. The majority are institution focused this year, ranging from directing institutions to develop COVID plans all the way to requiring institutions to place suicide hotline phone numbers on student ID cards. But there are a couple bills that will impact us directly. The Secretary spoke about Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 1. I'd just like to add one little bit of information about Senate Bill 1. They're both, right now, they're both a little different. Senate Bill 1, the Budget and Taxation Committee added the funds from the Cigarette Restitution Fund to the additional funding mechanism for that bill, which at last check I saw, it was around $243 million. So that lessens the fiscal impact of that bill. Right now, they're both in their opposite houses. Neither have been scheduled for a hearing. There is another bill that might be of interest to us. In the recently, when the General Assembly overrode the veto of the governor's veto on the Kerwin Commission bill, it created an accountability and implementation board. Well, there's a bill that requires the accountability and implementation board to contract with a consultant to conduct a study of the capability and capacity of MSDE, MHEC, Department of Labor, and other state government entities to carry out their duties and to implement the blueprint for Maryland's future. Preliminary reports due December 15th, final report by September 1st next year. So that bill's pending, has not been scheduled for a hearing yet. And that is all I have so far. As Jeff mentioned, we have our budget hearings are progressing well. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Commissioners? For Dr. Fielder, any additional comments? Dr. Fielder, I think you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
All right.
There we go.
I know you've all probably seen the joke that's circulating on Facebook that these kind of meetings are like the old seances. Are you here? Can I see you? Are you here? I can hear you, but yeah, it feels like that. I apologize. I clicked the wrong button when I'm trying to do two things at once. But anyway, the comment is simply a recognition of the tremendous work of MHAC staff, as well as all of higher education in this very tumultuous year, to be able to pivot on a dime, on the head of a pin or whichever, and move from face-to-face to virtual online learning has been phenomenal. And to make sure that the support systems are there so students can move forward has been recognized by the elected officials. So I think that there's, solid appreciation for what we've been able to get done. And Lee, of course, is the one who is hearing the most of that. So, but I wanted to recognize everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lee. All right, does this require any action from us, or was this just for our information?
No, information only.
Okay, very good. So do we move on to Dr. Dow now?
Yep.
Thank you, Chair Smerrick, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I am just going to turn the time over to our Director, Trish Gordon-McCown. She will provide an update and walk you through the 2 quarterly reports that are in the Commission book. Trish.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to present the quarterly reports for the Collegiate unit first. This report covers our 4th quarter. The time period is from October 1st to December 31st of 2020. The Collegiate unit is managed by the Associate Director, Karen King Sheridan, and the out-of-state portion is headed by our Senior Analyst, Jackie Cade. During this quarter, we've had 179 academic program proposals under review. Most notable for this report, you will see that we've had 44 actions by our independent colleges, 71 actions by our four-year publics, and 61 by our public community colleges. There was one program objection on the in-state proposals, and this objection came from Notre Dame of Maryland University for the Physician's Assistant Program. The final decision on that objection was made on December 30th of 2020. For the out-of-state institutions, we had 3 actions during this quarter, and we had one objection. The one objection did come from an institution of South University, and that objection was resolved and the program was recommended. I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the Collegiate Quarterly Report for Quarter 4.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
Okay.
Yeah, my only question would be, would you draw our attention to anything in particular in here? It seems pretty similar to stats in the past, and I'm aware of the couple instances of objections. But anything else?
Sure. It should be noted that 2 institutions withdrew a number of programs from their off-site locations that will be located under the partnership section. Those 2 institutions were Towson University and the other was Loyola University.
And when you say they were removed from site, does that mean that they were going from brick and mortar to online or something else?
They're just no longer being offered under that at that closed site location.
So the program contains, it's just not housed at a particular place?
It's no longer offered at the closed site that it was previously offered at. So those programs still may be available. They're just no longer offered at that site. So that might look a little strange because we usually don't have that much activity in that section.
Got it.
So if I could just provide some additional clarification. So when an institution wants to offer an academic program off-site, they need to notify MHEC. We determine whether or not it will be an open off-site. So for example, if they're offering it at a regional higher ed center or at another kind of open location, then we do one kind of review. If it's a closed site, meaning that it's only for employees or specific individuals, it's not an open site. So for example, these programs, I believe, are education programs. So they were offered at closed sites at specific K through 12 locations for teacher continuing ed. Then we consider them closed sites. It's just, I guess I'm trying to let you know that there's a distinction between closed sites and open sites when an institution offers the programming not on their home campus.
Right, and another way to think of it, a closed site is to a confined membership, like say a closed site would be from a community college or a 4-year to go to a high school system and actually offer courses that are closed to the teachers. Open means open to the public. So it's not a question of whether they're continuing the education, it's open to the public or closed to the public. That's the difference in those 2 terms.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a couple questions about that just for understanding?
Sure.
So does that mean that these are public universities, colleges that are almost in a proprietary relationship then with a corporation, a school, that they're essentially acting as consultants, like they're doing professional development for some sort of group, as opposed to what their normal mission would be through enrollment and applications and so on?
I think that's one way to say it. Another way would to recognize that typically when they're off-site, they're requesting to go off their campus to offer it, you know, maybe in an area that there is another higher ed institution. But because it's a closed site, meaning it's not open to the public, then it doesn't run into as much opposition or objection. Emily and Trish, you know this better than I.
You've got it.
Nothing to add.
Yeah, so standard process. This is nothing that's particularly noteworthy. It just happens from time to time.
Right.
Yeah. And to Ms. Gordon-McCowan's point, we just don't usually get that much activity for closing a closed site, but that is of note in this quarterly report.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Emily, do you have any sense of what that was related to?
Trish, are you able to provide more detail?
No, I would have to probably look into that a little bit more outside of just a shift in training, but specific details, I might have to get back to you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. I just wondered if it was COVID related or anything like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay. If not, we also don't have to approve this. I assume we can just move on to the next.
No, this is just for information. And then the next report will be for our career and workforce education private career school unit. So I'll do that one real quick.
Okay.
So the second report is for the career and workforce education unit that's headed by Dr. Ashley Wallace. During the fourth quarter report, we had 297 actions captured on this report. Should be noted that of those 297 actions, 236 were requests for student transcripts for closed schools. As we indicated in previous reports, that is a function of the unit, and those are for closed schools only. The unit processes those requests. In addition, in this report, it should be noted that there was one new school application approved, which is Gorgie Tenders. It's a bartending mixology school. And then there was one institution that closed during the quarter. That was Vaughan Lee International. That was an orderly closure. Proper notification was given and the owners were very cooperative. In addition, on this report, there were 20 actions taken for training provider questionnaires. Those are requests that come in for evaluation of training to see if it should be regulated by MHEC or if it's exempt or if it's not regulated due to the programs that are offered or the coursework that's offered doesn't fall under our regulations. That concludes the quarterly report for the Career and Workforce Education Unit. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification. And in this case, when Trish was using the word closed school, it meant that it ceased operation. So it wasn't a closed site. So several years ago, we went through a number of closures or ceasing operations. And then you deal with, did you capture all of the transcripts and student records that, as we know within MHEC, some of the more difficult ones are the students that were at an international location for a Maryland institution that are still sending us letters, well, I didn't get my transcript. Yet it's holding them up from a job or grad school. So there's a lot of work that goes into the private career schools. And as you heard, almost 300 actions this year. And that's in addition to the normal 2- and 4-year public and private institutions.
So when they close, does that mean that MHEC automatically bears a responsibility for collecting student documents? Oh, heavens.
Yes. Yes, and not only that, these institutions, when they first seek approval by state law, are required to put up a performance bond. And it's the performance bond that we go against to pay reimbursement of tuition and other costs for transcripts and so forth. So, and Emily can clarify some more, I'm sure, than that.
I will just add, just since we're talking about this, there was some legislation that was passed last session, last year, around closed schools and processes and requirements and procedurally how MHEC should handle them. You will likely receive regulations in the upcoming months specific to that legislation and detailing things like records, bonds, when refunds would be issued. So just know that there's we are having a lot of internal discussion around procedurally this new law that kind of mandates a lot of what we already do in practice, but there are some things that now require some regulations to further articulate all that.
Can you give me a ballpark figure? Like, how often does an institution close, putting this new burden on you? Are we talking a couple times a year, 20 times a year, once every 10 years?
Sure. So it's slightly different between our colleges and universities closing versus our private career schools closing. Our private career schools, we see certainly at least one private career school, I would say, within any 12-month period. We've seen upwards of 3 or 4 kind of close all at the same time. They close for a number of reasons. One, the most common is just they're done. They don't want to serve students anymore. They've taught out all the students and they just want to close operations. Another common is financial reasons or a leasing requirement, that their lease is up and they can't find another space, and so they need to cease operations, or financially it's just not sound for them to maintain operations. Another reason why both either our private career schools or our college or universities would close is accreditation reasons, that the accreditor has come in and put sanctions on them that prohibit them from really continuing, or financially, again, because of the accreditation rules. So there's a lot of different reasons for why an institution would close. But it does happen. It's happened far more frequently in recent years. And I will say I do feel like I've been on a few national calls when there have been national closures, so multi-state operations, and I do think Maryland has a bit of a head start with figuring out how to do closed schools. I think we do it well, particularly in supporting students. We organize teach outs. Again, as Secretary Fielder mentioned, we have bonds in place to offer refunds so that we minimize the harm to students as much as possible, because this is very much out of their control. Trish, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to also add to that.
No, just that I do unfortunately foresee that there could be more actions because of the current pandemic. That's definitely challenged a lot of our institutions, especially those smaller organizations that have that financial stability is already an issue for them. So we'll probably see more, but I do think, as Dr. Della stated, we have a very good process to identify those institutions and help navigate them through the process of closure and working with the students. In the past, before the pandemic, we would actually go on site and meet with the school and with the students and offer them one-on-one assistance so that they could navigate through the refund process, maintaining their student transcripts and final invoice so that they could transition to another program. So that teach-out agreement is very crucial in the transition for those students. And it relieves a lot of anxiety, I think, when they see us on site or they have interactions with one of our analysts. All of our analysts are pretty much, they're trained to go straight into action when a school closes. Our senior analysts are very good at identifying what's needed and getting those documents over to school so the students relieve some of their anxiety.
Wonderful.
Well, that's very helpful.
There's, Mr. Chair, I could just add, there's one other element that for some of the commissioners that go back just a few years with us at the federal level action taken by the U.S. Department of Education on financial aid, student financial aid. So there was a review with the last Secretary DeVos regarding whether the financial aid for veterans should be included in the calculation or not, and that triggers then a cash watch and a potential closures of some institutions. So there are actions that can occur outside of our control or authority from the federal level, which have direct impact on these national institutions. And one of the things to understand, of course, is the private career schools. A lot of the students, some of the students, I wouldn't say all, choose the route to a career through licensure and certificate as compared to going after the degree. It's quicker. Typically, it's open admission, meaning you don't have to have the different GPA or scores and financial capability. Some of the pernicious actors at the federal level, the national level, that were closed several years ago were taking advantage of these students by promising them, if you come in and sign up to take courses, we'll make sure that we get all the money you need from the federal government, and then we'll promise you a job at the end. The promise of the job at the end became a metric that was used to close some of the nationals, and we had a couple of the branches here that we had to deal with. So Emily and staff have done just a phenomenal job. Trish and Christine Wellens, who was our previous assistant AG, one of the highlights for her was she had to go to try to capture records before they disappeared. When the landlord was closing down sites and locking the records up, she ended up in Indiana in a rainstorm and a flood with boots on and 3 inches of water trying to preserve student records. I mean, it's extraordinary what people have done. I just can't express my appreciation enough for their commitment to it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
And if I may, for the record, just to piggyback on working with the Department of Veterans Affairs, having an internal unit that deals specifically with veterans education benefits, that unit does also assist students collecting veterans education benefits in the event of a school closure and helps them to navigate. And in some cases, they're able to recapture their months of entitlement to help them to transition on to another institution to complete their education and training. So that's very helpful having all of that under one roof.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just for what it's worth, some of my questions related to this is in a previous life, I worked as a charter school authorizer, and until you do that work, you never realize that it's one thing to start a school, it's an entirely different thing to close down a school, because it raises all these questions about liability and assets and students' future and students' records, and it's trying to like unscramble eggs. And so I was just curious how often this burdens you and how you're able to get through it. And related to some comments I made during our committee meeting, ultimately what's on my mind here is when these things happen, what becomes of the students who really had nothing to do with the closure but are ultimately impacted by it. And if we see a rash of closures in a particular domain, cosmetology, welding, computers, what does that mean for the students in Maryland who were looking at that as a pathway to career success, some sort of 2-year program? And if all those programs go away, what does that do for those students, but also our overarching goal of whatever it is, 65% of young people with post-secondary credentials? So the closure issue is of interest to me, even though I don't know how I can help, but you have my sympathy when you go through this for sure.
No, I would appreciate those comments and the analogy of unscrambling eggs. This staff has learned to make an omelet with those. So we just add a couple ingredients that's better for everybody, and we move on.
Well done.
I will add that as you probably know from your own experience, thank you for sharing that. A lot of this, at least from my perspective, is relationship developing and rapport for this potentially closed school. They often feel that we are going to put sanctions on them if they're going to close, and we really worked to take down that barrier so that they tell us ahead of time. The worst case scenario is that they we find out from a student because the door is locked. They go to show up for class and the door is locked. So a lot of this is relationship developing with these school owners and knowing that, yes, we are a regulatory agency, but if you are in trouble and considering closing, work with us sooner rather than later because everybody wins in that scenario.
Great mindset. Okay, are there any other questions, comments from commissioners on this report? Again, I assume we don't need to take any action.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other reports along these lines? Is there one more?
We have one more. Alexia Van Orden.
Alexia Van Orden is going to present some new regulations. Go ahead, Alexia.
I hope you can you hear me now? My microphone and camera has been, okay, thank you. Before I actually present this, I wanted to give you a very quick background on the Fire Rescue Education Training Commission. So it is a division of MHEC, and I am the staff liaison for them. Similar to MHEC, it consists of members from across the state. They're all volunteer and career firefighters and emergency and medical services personnel. So the Instructor Certification Review Board, it's also contained a bit in the memo, but it was established by the Fire Rescue Education and Training Commission and with the purpose of maintaining and developing and maintaining a rigorous statewide system of ensuring instructor excellence. In this board, similarly, it has membership from key organizations throughout the state, and it is responsible for developing the regulations that govern minimum standards for instructor certifications. So turning to my memo, which is on page 42 of the commission book, the purpose of this memo is to request approval to publish for comment proposed regulations for the Maryland Instructor Certification Review Board. The attached amendments that you'll see beginning on page 43, I believe, revise the regulations to update the edition year of the appropriate instructor standards manual, change certain instructional methods, and make minor style and language changes. And as I indicated before, the Maryland Instructor Certification Review Board is responsible for establishing the process for certifying emergency services instructors in accordance with the standards that are established through the Maryland Higher Education Commission and the Fire Rescue Education Training Commission. And the certification that is granted by the process established in these regulations provides emergency services personnel throughout the state with the competent instructors required that are qualified to provide instruction and training in one or more emergency services disciplines. And so this is an action item for the commission. With me today, in case there are any questions, is the chair of the Fire Rescue Education and Training Commission. It's John Jerome, and he is the deputy chief from Howard County Fire and Rescue Services.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Welcome. Yes, we're very happy to have him.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for being with us.
I don't know whether anyone might have questions or comments.
Yeah, thoughts from commissioners.
Okay, well, in that case, oh, sorry.
I was going to ask a quick question. Is there any legislation that you're watching that we need to be aware of that would impact this organization?
From a higher education standpoint, probably not that I'm aware of. There's always legislation that we watch moving through, but I think higher education wise, I think we're good. Of course, there's the Riley Scholarship, which we upgraded or updated the language last year that we're kind of waiting to evaluate how effective those changes were for that legislation. But other than that, I would say no, there's nothing on the radar for MHEC.
Okay, thank you.
This particular standard or this particular Komar piece, part of the update is the changing standards for what educators or how educators are educated. So the standard gets very specific into what requirements we're looking for to qualify for certification as an emergency services instructor in the state of Maryland. And because the credentials for teachers are changing a little bit, that's what we're trying to keep up with these changes.
Excellent. Okay, so this does need to be voted on by the commission, I assume?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so are there any questions, comments, thoughts from members of the commission about the draft proposal? Okay, seeing none, unless Dr. Fielder, you have anything else to add, I guess we can move to a motion.
Yeah.
Alexia, could you read the recommendation one more time?
Sure. It is recommended that the Maryland Higher Education Commission approves for publication in the Maryland Register the attached proposed amendments to the Maryland Instructor Certification Review Board regulations and authorize MHEC's attorneys to approve non-substantive revisions as necessary to conform to the proposed regulations or to conform the proposed regulations to the stylistic and formatting requirements of AELR and the Division of State documents.
I'll
right.
move approval.
Okay, that's Commissioner Surkamp. Is there a second?
Commissioner Brown, I second.
Second from Commissioner Brown. Thank you, sir. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none. All right, so all in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would add is, Alexia, where are you reporting from? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, still can't hear.
Okay. Well, it's international reporting. That's how.
Oh, heavens.
Yes.
We're an international, multinational corporation here.
Yeah, we're from Scotland. From Scotland.
Really?
And John is local, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of you for that. Just looking at the agenda, it appears that is the final thing the state plan update?
Sure, I can. I do not have a formal update for the commissioners. Just really, I wanted to share that what I presented at our last commission meeting to you as commissioners, those new priorities, I have presented that to both the Faculty Advisory Council and the Student Advisory Council. They have both provided some feedback, particularly the Student Advisory Council. We had quite a good discussion on Saturday, and so I'll be incorporating their feedback in the upcoming draft that we will circulate out for public comment. The draft will just be on the new priorities right now. That's what we're focusing our writing on, and you will certainly be made aware when that goes out for public comment, and then I'll provide a further update of that public comment at the March meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions. The new priorities have been well received by the two advisory councils. Like I said, they've given me some feedback in terms of details and examples and issues that should be articulated in those sections.
Great. Any questions from the commissioners?
I know we'll eventually get to see the full report, Dr. Dowell, but I'm curious about what the students, do you have a remember of what some of the feedback the students gave?
Let me quickly pull up my notes. I think I can do this quickly.
Commissioner Miller, are you part of that?
Yes, I did attend the last Student Advisory Council meeting. They did have a lot to say about the new priorities, but I would also need to pull up my notes.
Okay.
So have it. It's just giving me an error. So things like, so we had in priority 3, evaluate and improve systems that inform and evaluate a student's academic readiness for post-secondary education. So this is part of student access. We had a lot of conversations around just really advising students to get into college and what that looks like. So not just thinking about, people talking about students being college ready, but engaging students in terms of what they are college ready for. So it's a bit of a tie-in between what's already happening at the high schools in terms of college advising, but taking a much more student-focused approach to that, and talking about college readiness from a student perspective. So that was one point that the student advisory mentioned. Another point, particularly Commissioner Boyd, I think you'll appreciate this. Quality of online education, is it equitable? That came from the Student Advisory Council, which is, I'm ashamed to admit, we really didn't have any text necessarily prepped for that issue, but nonetheless, they brought it up and we'll certainly add that text. So the students talked about online education, whether there are same outcomes when an institution offers the same course, both face-to-face and in-person versus online, same outcomes, same curriculum, same standards, and that really there should be a push to ensuring that there's a maintenance of standardization. And you can imagine on campuses, if you silo faculty members to say, you're going to teach the online section and you're going to teach the face-to-face section, that quickly breaks down in terms of ensuring that the quality of online education remains the same for what you would expect in a traditional face-to-face or seats and seats or in-person course. So that came through and lots of discussion around that.
I was interested in that idea because that really is the question of the day. Not only how effective it is, but once they are in the employment situation, how well did it really work? There's a tremendous need for research in that area.
The students, I think, would absolutely agree with you. I think they are living that real experience right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can wait to hear about the rest. That was the main thing I was searching for.
I'll stop.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that matter from commissioners, Dr. Fielder, or your team?
The only thing that I would like to mention is on your screen, you can see Jamal Butler. He's going to be leaving our department, taking a position somewhere else. And I just wanted to say thank you to him. He's the one of the ones behind the scenes that keeps all our academic programs inventory up to date, checks tons of stuff. And there he is. Jamal, hello. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Butler, thank you for your service.
Yes.
Good luck in the future.
Good luck. Can't hear.
Okay, good. And that's all other than to note our next meeting is March the 24th at 1 o'clock.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and thanks to each one of the commission members for all the commitment time you spend on this. It really is tremendously appreciated in terms of your support and what we've been able to move forward. So thank you.
Well, thank you to you and your team, and especially Dr. Dow and your team, who I assume were working double duty to also staff the committee a few days ago. So I'm sure that's another burden on you. So I appreciate all that you do. Any final comments from any of the commissioners before we wrap up?
Hello, this is Jamal. I'm gonna see if I have sound now. Maybe
you do.
I do. I'm sorry. I'm connecting by phone and doing the video. So, hello, Secretary Fielder. Thank you for that, and nice to meet you finally, Chairperson Andy and everyone else.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Best of luck moving ahead.
Yes. Good luck.
Yeah. Best wishes and stay well. Yes.
All right, commissioners, last words. All right, hearing none, if someone wants to make a move to adjourn.
I'll get us going.
Okay, so that's Dr. Surkamp with the motion. Anyone want a second?
One second, Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you, Commissioner McDaniels. All right, seeing no discussion necessary, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
So bye, everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you, Chair.